The technical presentation would be taken ahead by Mr. Neerav and Balbodh ahead, and I'll take you through the basic introduction first. Okay. The webinar has been sponsored by Signet Infotech. We are an IT solutions and services provider um, since over little less than 1.5 decade, almost 15 years by now. We serve our clients in end-to-end enterprise content management solutions across the globe in around more than 30 countries. And uh, some of our key accreditations are on the screen, as you can see, the CMMI, the ISO, and the ISTQB, which is specific to our testing and automation testing services. TestingWhiz is Signet's product since around 3 years by now, and it has grown stably and smartly across in the organization as well as in its own customer base. Its basic objective is to increase the productivity of the QA team or the testing team, and of course when it is about the increasing of the productivity and smartness of the testing team, it's about the automation. Before diving into more of the details, a little bit on its success stories. We have been featured in Tech Target, SD Times and CNET, and also in the Upload, Better Software and ET twice. The basic feature set or the basic responsibility of the tool is automation testing around web, cloud and mobile, making it easy and intuitive for all the quality assurance team members, and the specific attributes or specific aspects of the testing and the automation testing that it covers are into the automated database testing, the functional UI testing, the automated cross-browser testing, and the distributed test execution. The icons on the each of the area are much clear, and in today's webinar is more about how do you leverage automated database testing to gain better ROI, to increase your ROI, and basically empowering your teams to utilize the tool and accelerate the performance over the manual work or over non-smart automated tools. So I hand over this webinar to Balbodh, and he can take you further with it.
Thank you, Bhumi ma'am. We have agenda for today. We have first agenda as why automation database testing is important for any company, and its strategy, how its strategy would be. Second agenda in our list is say common challenges which we face in automating database testing. Third is what can be automated with TestingWhiz. Say currently we are addressing these four main four points which say like database can be automated, database testing can be automated, database comparison can be performed with the help of TestingWhiz, database can be validated with the help of TestingWhiz, a regular health check for database would be more than efficient for constant connectivity with a database. And lastly, we would provide you a simple demo of with TestingWhiz how we can achieve these automated database testing with TestingWhiz. Moving ahead, first of all, why database testing? Why do we need it? Now if we talk about data, data is a very critical form for any type of company. Say it is a very critical point where business comes around. All companies ranging from e-commerce to pharma, banking, insurance companies, all these companies have their data very much important as their asset. With varying complexities and heterogeneous environments, companies have different forms of strategies and testings all in a place. Now, how many times it would happen that the code changes which has been deployed to the production server, but schema changes are not rolled out, and hence it has resulted in chaos. Now, if we talk about how it has been resulted in the application will not be working as previous. It was working like pretty well. So this part is of smoke testing strategy for QA. How many times you could not reproduce the scenarios on test servers which is already reproducible on production servers. It's data who can be culprit. How do we make sure that rights given to some users temporarily has been rolled back or not? Are you running over allocated quotas on some DB objects or not? This all is covered as a part of continuous activity and falls under database testing or data validation testing, or we can say database health checkup. However, database testing should be distinguished from strategies to deal with other problems such as database crashes, broken insertions, deletions, or updates. Now, importance of automation test strategy for database testing. Now, this strategy of database testing should be unique as compared to other testing strategies. Executing tests partially or repeating tests unnecessarily can cost a company huge resources. A separate test plan is always recommended for database testing. It is very much vital to identify regular database tests to cover data validation, schema verification, and security checks. All critical modules of the applications should be bound with risk-based testing for database scripts to balance time, cost, and quality aspects. Quality needs to be periodically checked. Testing data quality is an ongoing continuous process. Automation strategy for database testing. Now, strategy starts with identifying a scope, data verification, schema verification, health checks, database guideline checks, security checks, and lot more. We decide inclusions, we decide exclusions. Now, we list down after this all these verification checks. We list down risk severity in the scale of say 1 to 5 and prepare risk-based testing matrix basis, which is a basis for test automation. Now, moving ahead, after identifying scope, we go ahead with test script preparations. After test script preparation, we go to data certification. In data certification, we perform query to query comparisons, or say perform file to table comparison, perform table to table comparison across say multiple databases, which can include staging environment databases and live environment databases. Going ahead, we need to execute those scripts which we have prepared along the test strategy. In test script execution, we execute SQL queries, we execute PL/SQL commands, we execute procedures, and one-time scheduled execution. Now after this execution has been done, we move ahead with drill down reporting, in which the reporting might be in a text format, say chart format, or we can drill ahead with the reportings in logs and warning mails, which is sent across to the say stakeholders. We move ahead with post execution monitoring. Say we report after we found a bug in database moving scenario, in which we report bugs to a bug tracking tools, log execution history to a test management tool. Now after post execution monitoring, we may schedule our integration with the scheduler part, in which we can execute at our predefined condition, and at last we can cross check with our UI part with the database testing part. So moving ahead, I will hand over to Neerav Sanghvi, which will take over for the rest of the webinar. Thanks.
Thank you, Valmor. Hi audience, this is Neerav, and I'll tour through the common challenges that could be there while we are preparing the automation or while we are doing the automation. So with applications going agile, there would be very frequent releases every now and then. So how do we cope up with the testing cycles? The time given to us being a QA or database system experts is always scarce. So unless there is an automation strategy in place, it would always be difficult to go and do the enough justice to the build that we have received. How do we keep enforcing that the best practices and standards which has been set right at the beginning of project when it was started, it is still continued? So if there is a team size of say more than 100 people, you cannot go to each one's desk and check if they are enforcing the standards that has been set. So it is the automation script which will keep an eye on that and will keep on checking these standards. So yes, automation is definitely the need. With agile requirements by the prospects, clients or investors, you keep on changing the application, and it will definitely need the frequent changes in database schema. So as Balbad was mentioning, it would be really difficult if the application changes has been deployed but the schema changes are not, then it will result in chaos. So how do we deal with frequent changes in database schema? Once you are dealing with say gigabyte of data or nowadays with terabytes of data, it cannot be the case that application is culprit all the time. It could also be the data which is resulting in some issues in production environment. So checks on data integrity, they are always tricky. Keep on doing repetitive testing cycles on database, that too on multiple environments. It is doable with manual scripting, but it requires a lot of time and the ROI aspects will be in danger. So unless we have proper in place risk-based testing strategies in place, these cycles cannot be performed well. And finally, a lot of issues could be categorized as producible at random, producible sometimes, producible only on production, may not be produced on QA or development environment. So how do we make sure that we get rid of this kind of issues and challenges? So automation is definitely an answer, and I would put it across like a proper automation strategy with a proper tool which can give me an exact balance between time, cost and quality, and hence the ROI aspect is a proper solution. So before I can go and choose an automation tool, I should be making sure whether it will be completing all my today's need and tomorrow's need as well. For instance, if I'm working on an RDBMS today and the way the application is scaling and the user base that I have got, if tomorrow I go and switch over to say a Hadoop or big data stuff, will my automation strategy or tool support that? If not, then whatever strategy I am building, and if it is meeting my today's need, I need to perform this exercise tomorrow. So I need to visualize being a QA manager or a decision maker whether my needs for tomorrow will be satisfied by the strategy and tool I am purchasing or not. Of course, cost is always a decision making instance. So I need to make sure that I'm not paying a lot of stuff just not for procuring the tool, but also the manpower which is going to use this tool. So with this background in consideration, let us take a look at that what could be automated. Data integrity checks. So at times you would like to synchronize between your primary and secondary servers, or if you are having a single server, you might want to dump the production data to QA data after sanitizing a few data sets so that you can produce a few sticky issues on QA environment. So yes, this process can be automated. Performance checks, meaning say for instance I have deployed my application on a cloud and the space purchased on my cloud is getting increased, and I would like to keep an eye that how many heavy objects are being created on my DB instance. Then I cannot keep on executing queries every now and then and check for the thresholds. What I could do is I could build a script, put it on a scheduled execution or maybe on a cron job which can keep sending me reports if my thresholds are safe or not. So yes, that can be automated. Database schema checks. For instance, you would like to synchronize and check if the number of tables or stored procedures or functions or triggers, they should be same in number on my QA instance and on my production instance. So the moment I deploy on production and I can execute or trigger this automation script which can quickly verify if my database objects are in sync as far as numbers is concerned or not. If it is not the case, it is time to bring down the latest deployed build and you can fall back to the previous build. So a kind of smoke test can be performed definitely with the help of automation scripts. Database security checks. For instance, you like to keep an eye on how many users are given a read-write privilege being a super admin or super user to the database. So if that number is fixed and if that number is being increased by 1 or 2, you might be at risk because somebody might have done some intrusion or a temporary access to given backdoor, and you'd like to receive an alarm that there is an additional user granted an access on the production database. So that is the kind of security checks that can be run if things are automated. Reporting to managers. For instance, there is an e-commerce store and there are multiple vendors who is putting a lot of items and SKUs on the website, and you'd like to check if there is a product which is having its price labeled more than the discounted price. So if discounted price is say $5,000 and if the original price is $6,000, it is a valid scenario. But if it is the reverse, then your branding is in danger. You cannot charge $6,000 for a $5,000 item, right? So if you would like to get the report of all such items and bring it to the notification of concerned stakeholders, then it's a very simple straight script which could be automated and kept on scheduled execution. Reporting could be used in an alternate way wherein, say for instance, there is a startup and the application is built as far as the public face is concerned, but the admin module is yet to be built. Still, if my investors wants that I would like to have some reports for the beta website that is there in production, what I could do is I could go and execute queries on the backend. I can bring up the summary reports and I can send it across to my investors. So instead of doing this thing, what I could do is I could prepare an automation script and which can run on daily basis and which can give data back in the form of reports to the concerned investors or stakeholders. So yes, that will be as good as an admin module and which keeps on sending reports. At times you might want to do some cleanup action, that too on regular basis. So an instance could be we are grabbing a temporary set of data in some temporary table before I could execute some say import functionality or regular bulk upload functionality. But that temporary table should be cleaned on regular basis, otherwise it would impose a performance penalty on the application. So if I see that okay, the threshold is set for say 10 lakh records, then once it reaches there, I need to perform the delete action on that temporary object. Or as soon as a report or a record is getting a month old, it can safely be cleaned. So if I'd like to perform this kind of action, I could write a query, put it on a scheduled execution, and the job is done. At times, QA team might want to reproduce some issues and would like to dump a lot of data. So you would like to insert, say, 1,000,000 records in your QA instance. It could easily be done with the help of a test script which is running on some tools like TestingWhiz, and you could automate that process. So a variety of jobs can be performed with the help of smart automation testing strategy tools, and it can be performed. So as Bhumi and Bhargav were mentioning that TestingWhiz offers an easy and intuitive way connecting to databases and performing all kind of challenges that we have just seen. It is definitely a codeless approach to perform the database testing. When I say it is codeless, I mean there is no scripting or no coding involved in order to do the automation. It is keyword driven and data driven approach which helps performing the automation. So the time that it takes to perform and prepare the script, it is way lesser than the other automation strategies and tools. It supports all standard databases, MySQL, Oracle, IBM DB2, SQL Server, Postgres, Teradata, and Hadoop. It can also do asynchronous testing for the SQL queries for the backend and the verification scripts on the front end. So I might perform some steps wherein I query the SQL server on the backend, I grab the results and then compare that result on the front end part. So I can have a coherent solution wherein the integration with the functional testing can be performed, and that would be as good as a 3-step process. So if I want to perform this kind of check, it will take me only 7 minutes and the job would be done. So we are shortly going to see a demo how TestingWhiz can help building the scripts and running day-to-day jobs. Of course, the concepts for object orientation and reusable components. It can be created from within TestingWhiz and can be shared across teams so that we can perform better collaboration. And once the scripts prepared by the development team or QA team, if it is stable enough, that can be kept on the scheduled jobs, which is an out-of-box support provided by TestingWhiz, and the jobs can be triggered for the regression aspects. It will help maintaining and reducing the complexity and the maintenance for the test scripts. And once the bugs are found, those bugs can be reported with all the steps and the snapshot to the bug tracking tool like Jira, Mantis, and Fogbugs. So database testing is being performed by TestingWhiz as an end-to-end solution. You prepare the script, execute the scripts, put it over scheduled execution. If bugs are found, put it on the bug checking tool. This all can be done with the help of the single tool. So I'll be switching over to a demo, and I'll try and show you how things can be performed with the help of TestingWhiz. So I'll pause for a moment so that the screen refreshes and you guys can see my screen. Alright, so here is my TestingWhiz Enterprise Editor. I have my test project and it is having the test suites under it, and then finally I have test cases at the leaf level. So on the left you could see that there is some scripts prepared which I'm calling DB testing demo. There is a setting wherein you can configure all this stuff. Say for instance databases, I can go and add the database of my choice from say MySQL or MS SQL or even say Teradata. So I can specify the alias which will be used in scripting, database name or URL, the host, there is URL, the port number, username and password. So once the details are provided, I can go and make a connection to the database. Say for instance test is a database on my local machine and I have provided all these details. I can make a test connection. If things are okay, it will say connected successfully, and then I can use this test which is an alias in my script. So I have some data check which is my first script. So on the right I'm saying database, which is a test command. So under database on the left you could see that there is a test command available which says database fetch, database query or database comparison. So on the right I can utilize these commands. I can say database fetch, which is my first step, and in the value column I say go and pick this alias which is say eShabdaProd and perform this query. Select count star from user. So this query is going to return me the number of users that is present in this schema. So I can hold this value in a variable because this query is going to return me a single result, and my target variable would be say user count prod. I can specify the timeout and that is it. So one single step is going to execute a query, will grab the result in some temporary variable. I can make a connection to another instance, say secure pub QA. Again I am executing the same query and storing the result in a different variable. So my objective is to perform the count check on two different instances of the same database and check if they are equal or not. So I'm just trying to make a very simple check for counts on two different databases. If they are equal, I'll say the test case is pass. If they are not, on the else part, I log the message and I explicitly fail the test case. So all of these test steps that you are seeing are the test commands offered by TestingWhiz. So such we have almost 250 commands available in TestingWhiz with which you can perform this kind of testing. Similarly, I can call some store procedures, or I can go and do some performance checks. Say for instance, if I would like to check the heavy table counts, then I can have some query fired on my schema if it is a MySQL instance, and I can check if there are any tables which is having more than 1 lakh records. So all such things will be referred in a count, and then I can say if number of tables having this radar reaching more than 1000 or say 1 lakh, then it should be notified. And then I can go and do some checks greater than or equal to, say if 5 is my threshold. So if I'm getting more than 5 records or more than 5 tables having 1 lakh or more records, the test case is bound to fail. There is an if-else condition written, and if the condition is meeting, it will fail the test case. Similarly, for standard checks, if there is a standard set that all the tables that we are creating should be having a primary key, and there should not be any table without a primary key, then it could be a straight check. We execute a query, get the value in a variable, and then check the value of that variable. Similarly, I can go and do the table count or store procedures count between two instances. I can perform some security checks, or if the development team is storing passwords in a plain string, if it is the case, then on security grounds I would like to fail the test case. I could do that. Not always I would like to do the fetch operations, but I would also like to do the DML operations, that is insert, update or delete. So I can say database and query, and I can perform say delete from dummy users, and I can perform that job. Even I can go and compare two different databases. So there is a single step wherein we say source one is query, perform on alias test, and here is the query. Source 2 could be query or file, so I can pick any one of them. If it is query, I can go and say, okay, use this DB alias, which is for now an instance of MS SQL Server. Again, a query will be executed, and whatever is the difference between these two, that will be stored in this variable, which is a percentage difference between these two schema. And I can specify the timeout, that how long this should take. This is a heavy table that I am trying to compare, having 1 lakh records in each. So I'm specifying a bit more of timeout. Even if I can go and compare with the previously stored results, so I can execute this query and compare it against previously stored file, and I can browse it to some previously stored CSV file. That should do. And once I'm done with preparing all my test cases, what I could do is we'll quickly running this test cases, and then it should give me results. On the left you could see that the test cases are being marked as red and green, and the entire execution is being performed for the whole test project. You could see some logs over here, that what kind of query is being executed. And finally, we should be presented with a beautiful report showing the summary of execution and detailed test logs. So preparing these test scripts and doing all kind of execution, it's really very easy and intuitive when we are working with TestingWhiz. It is executing the final query right now, which is fetching the actual content, storing it in a temporary file, executing another query, again storing it in a temporary file, and then comparing these two temporary files, and finally presenting the results. So we have made this test run, and it took almost 50 seconds, which got executed on Windows 7.6 on so-and-so date, and here is my result. So I have got my 9 test cases passing and 4 failing. I could see test suite wise distribution over here, and I can go and check that what all has happened. Like this first fetch command, it was executed in 204 milliseconds, and finally this got failed because the count from 2 different databases are 1145 and 2, which is not same, and we explicitly failed this test case on the comparison ground. So if they were equal, this test case would have been passed, but since these quantities are not equal, the test case is failing. So similarly, we can take a look at all the past test cases with the execution log, and we can also go and see the comparison over here. Since we have used this cross-DB comparison, which is pretty heavy in nature, but we'll also be able to see the visual comparison between two different data sets. So right now it is 0% variance because both of them are same. If there would have been some differences, those differences would have been highlighted over here in the visual editor, and we can navigate to the next available change in these two sources. So the first one was executed on MySQL, and the one on right got executed on MS SQL, and then we can use the navigation panel to go to the next available change. So this is pretty about the understanding on a very quick demo. We can definitely perform various kind of checks, including data verification, data validation, schema verification, database comparison across things, and things like that. Alright guys, it was a wonderful audience. Thank you very much for your time joining us. You'll be getting an email for the collaterals for the webinar so that you can refer it later, and you're most welcome to drop us an email at info@testing-whiz.com in case you need some assistance evaluating the tool, and you can stay tuned for the next webinars that we will be having. I would appreciate if you can go and install by downloading the TestingWhiz Enterprise Edition and provide us feedback. We'll be more than happy assisting you evaluating the tool. Thank you very much and have a nice evening ahead.